let's get to it. I mean, we're talking about this levy here. It's a public safety levy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people hear public safety, sometimes it's life and death. Is that what the difference is, whether this passes or not?
Well, that's dramatic. So what I would say is, for our public safety system to function, we need to have enough resources, adequate resources. And what we've seen over the years is that as Washington County has experienced tremendous population growth, which is a good thing. People are moving here, businesses are coming here. It's a livable, prosperous, vibrant community. We want our public safety system to keep pace with the community need. And in order to do that, we need to make sure we have enough police officers, enough jail deputies, enough prosecutors, enough people in the system doing the work that our community expects.
You know, at the city council meeting, you mentioned that your staff is essentially overworked. How is this going to alleviate that stress?
Well, this is one step toward making sure we have enough people to do the work. So the bulk of the funds that we use for public safety goes to people. And we've looked in our DA's office to make sure we have enough prosecutors and enough victim advocates and enough personnel to do the work, and we know we don't. In fact, our attorneys carry significantly higher caseloads than their counterparts in other counties. But we know that same story is replicated across the different public safety departments here in the county. So it's not just about one office, it's about our entire public safety ecosystem, which is why the sheriff and I are here together advocating for this levy, which will support the entire public safety system in Washington County.
What happens if this does not pass? What does it mean for the residents who live here?
Well, it means that critical services that we're providing will go away. So you will see some of those functions, some of the specialty teams that we provide, for instance, our mental health response team and some of our detectives and our critical jail deputies providing court security in the courts and in our jail. Those services will go away because we will have to restrict how we provide those services specifically just toward our core functions.
The same question?
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I mean, so roughly 16% of our public safety budget is funded and dependent upon this levy. And so when we think about what would happen if we didn't have the levy, we have to think about how we would be able to manage without roughly about 16% of our personnel not here. We've already experienced year after year worth of cuts in the county public safety system because we don't have the resources that are necessary. And so the levy has become just a really essential thing to keep pace with the community need.
People do have that concern.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I just can't afford any more taxes. So how do you convince them?
Well, what I would say is that I share that concern. As a taxpayer in Washington County, I also do not want more taxes. However, I do communicate that it is roughly $72 a year more than what they're currently paying, and that increase is critical to ensure that those who are doing the work can continue to respond to those 911 calls when people are in their most critical time of need. None of us want to pay more taxes, and the taxes that we're talking about are going to provide essential public safety functions. And one thing that every single person that lives or works in Washington County can agree on is that they want to feel safe in their homes, their communities, their businesses, and their neighborhoods.
Okay, and obviously I want to ask you the same thing because you may come across this question on the street.
Yeah, well, I would agree with everything the sheriff said. So on one hand, no one wants to pay more taxes, myself included. I'm raising my family here. I see how expensive things are just like everyone else. I have that same sticker shock when we go out to eat or go to the grocery store. So I want my taxes to be as low as possible. And at the same time, I want to live in a community where when I call the police or when a neighbor calls the police, they come. And when they come, they investigate. And when they investigate, they can make an arrest. And when they make an arrest, the DA can prosecute, and so on and so forth. That's the community I want to raise my family in. That's the community we have here in Washington County. And in order to keep our community safe, we need to make sure we have the adequate resources. And this levy is what allows us to do that.
I mentioned earlier there is a levy already in place, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's about to expire, right?
That's right.
Tell me the impact that has had.
Well, we've had a levy, a public safety levy in Washington County for about 25 years. And so the idea of a levy is nothing new. It's something we've had since about the year 2000. And so every 5 years, we've either continued the current amount of the levy or we've increased it to meet the increased community need and the increased expenses. So the levy that we are just finishing up now, which is a continuation of previous levies, it's allowed us to build the community and the public safety system that we've all come to expect here in Washington County. So in many ways, what we're proposing moving forward with is a continuation of what we have and also helps meet the additional need that we see in our community all around us when it comes to drug addiction issues, mental health issues, increased crime, all of those challenges. That's why the levy amount needs to increase to address that increased need.
You've had a program in place that I heard you mention that it's basically this led to the discovery of or the collection of more than 200 firearms. Tell me about that program. Is that from this levy, that current?
Well, I will tell you this. The program was developed before this levy, but during the operating time, the Community Violence Reduction Team. And so that team has had the most significant impact on public safety that I've seen in such a short period of time. That team came together in October, and in that time, just from last October to current, we've seized over 200 guns, had over 50 arrests. This levy and its evolution will continue to allow us to apply more resources to that team because we're seeing in our community that there's a greater need for that team. And that team isn't just a sheriff's office team. It's interagency and it's interdisciplinary with support with the district attorney's office.
We are in this jail, right? Well, not in the jail, but we're in the same, sort of the same building, right? We were talking about this last time, how, it's overpopulated essentially, and the amount of people who are being released. My understanding is that some of this money from the levy will be going to that to sort of alleviate that situation.
I'm happy to take that if you want.
Yeah, I would like to defer to the sheriff since the sheriff runs the jail.
Yeah. So the levy does fund positions in the jail. It also needs to fund additional court security positions that provide security throughout the courts, which is something that the sheriff is statutorily required to do. And those services are provided from our jail division staffing. And so the levy will increase our jail staffing. It will also increase our court security staffing, which will provide a better service and allow us to keep adults in custody longer.
Okay. Anything else that I didn't ask about this levy that you want people to know?
You know, I think the important thing for me about the levy is when I think about the type of crime that most people interact with, the headline grabbing stories that we see, a murder or a violent robbery, those are really concerning, but those don't, thankfully in Washington County, most people are not experiencing that. Most people are experiencing what I consider quality of life crimes. Someone stole their package, or a car was broken into, or a car may have been stolen, or vandalism, or shoplifting. And so the thing about this levy that I think is really important is it allows us to focus on the big crimes, the headline grabbing crimes, but also the bulk of the crime that's out there, which is the quality of life crimes. And if we don't focus on those quality of life crimes, that's when we start to see a decrease in the economic vibrancy of our community. We've seen what happens in communities where they don't focus on that, and neither one of us wants that to happen to our home, Washington County.